I recently put out a video going over every Disney animated movie. It was only natural that I covered Pixar too. So yeah, I watched every single Pixar movie. Disney and Pixar have always been linked together. Partly because Disney owns Pixar, and partly because they both produce high-quality animated kids movies. But it might be unfair to lump them together all the time, because Pixar is in a class by itself. They're always pushing the technological boundaries of animation to make their movies look better than they did before. And in terms of story, they're famous for putting the audience through the emotional ringer. Compared to Pixar, the average Disney movie is boring and derivative. Given that, it's unsurprising that Pixar movies have a lot of adult fans alongside the target audience of kids. Their movies are distinctly different from Disney, and for that reason, besides the fact that the Disney video got way too long, I dedicated Pixar its own video. It's pretty easy to watch through every Pixar movie. It's a straight shot through 24 of them. This was especially easy for me to get done since I'd already seen most of them. But I caught up on the handful that I missed, the ones that came out when I was in my early teens when I thought it was too cool for kids movies. I also checked back up on some that I hadn't seen since I was a little kid. Now I have a solid perspective on the studio as a whole. Let's see which movies are the best, which are the worst, and how they evolved over the years. Pixar came onto the scene in 1995 with Toy Story, the first ever fully 3D computer animated movie. They were their own independent company, but Disney handled marketing and distribution. Famously, it was really hard to make realistic looking humans with the tech that was available. Everything kind of looked plasticky. So Pixar made a movie about toys, which are already made of plastic. This movie is about a bunch of toys that belong to a boy named Andy, and who come to life when he's not around. It was a very strong showing right out of the gate, and Toy Story might be one of Pixar's best. The dynamic between main characters Woody and Buzz easily carries the story into greatness. Pixar's second movie is A Bug's Life. It's pretty good, but I wouldn't call it one of their best. It's about a bunch of ants who hire a bunch of warriors to protect their colony, Seven Samurai style. Except that these warriors are actually just circus performers who can't fight. The premise is built on a contrived misunderstanding, which hurts the rest of the story, but there's definitely plenty to like here. Toy Story 2 is a rare sequel that's just as good, or at least close to as good, as the first movie. It continues the adventures of Woody and all of Andy's toys. I especially love the villain.
I can't believe I have to drive all the way to work on a Saturday. All the way to work!
Monsters, Inc. is where Pixar really flexes its creative muscles. I mean, how great is this premise? The monsters in your closet are real, but they aren't actually scary, this is just their job. All the designs of the different monsters make for a really visually fun movie, and the dynamic between main characters Mike, Sully, and Boo ensures that this one is a slam dunk. Finding Nemo, it's hard for me to get an objective perspective on it, since I've seen it upwards of 20 times. Not because it's my favorite or anything, it's just that it always seemed to be every adult's go-to movie to throw in front of me when I was little. It's about a clownfish named Marlin on a quest to rescue his son Nemo from the humans who captured him. It's the kind of movie where you can feel that the writers did their research. I don't know much about the ocean, but all the species and environments around feel authentic and look great. Plus, all the characters have really great arcs, and all the emotional gut punches come at just the right times. The Incredibles. I'm calling it right here, no need to pretend otherwise. The Incredibles is the best Pixar movie. No question. I cannot give this movie enough praise. It seems like most other people agree with me. The Incredibles consistently tops almost every list of Pixar movies I see. Some standout elements. Every character has a superpower that ties into their personality and character arc perfectly. The villain is the best Pixar has to offer, and might even beat out all of Disney villains. The action is cool and exciting, which was not very common for computer animated movies at the time. And as a parody pastiche of the superhero genre, it's probably even more relevant today than it was in 2005, since superhero movies are everywhere now.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe it!
Pixar has hit some amazing heights since then, but in my humble opinion, nothing has topped this since. So, up until this point, Pixar has operated independently under a partnership with Disney. But when that deal was set to expire, Disney outright bought Pixar and made them a direct subsidiary. and the first movie to come out under this new arrangement was Cars. A lot of people really hate Cars, and some people blame Disney for pushing Pixar to make a subpar movie meant to sell toys. Personally, I think all this doom and gloom is overblown. Cars is a pretty good movie. It's not the masterpiece that a lot of Pixar's earlier and later movies were. I can't deny that the core idea has some issues. Like, the story is all well and good when the cars are on a racetrack, driving, but during any other scene, the fact that every character is a sentient car just makes things awkward. But none of that is bad enough to ruin the solid writing and heart that keeps this movie alive. If you listen to the internet hate train and stayed far away from this movie, I ask that you consider giving it a shot. Ratatouille is not Pixar's most well-known and successful movie, and it's not one that I have any real nostalgia for. But it turns out it has quite the following among Gen Z teens who were kids when it came out, as evidenced by the fan-made TikTok musical that made the rounds last year. The story about a rat who loves to cook is a fun one, but there's nothing here that sticks out as amazing to me. I describe it as good, not great. WALL-E is a very special movie, in that it perfectly rides the line between depressing and hopeful. It takes place in a horribly bleak future where humans have destroyed Earth with pollution, and their lives in space are full of hedonistic consumerism in a way that looks eerily familiar to some aspects of the real world. But on the other hand, the robot protagonist WALL-E provides the story with relentless optimism. His positive attitude is infectious, and it's amazing how well the animators were able to characterize him without dialogue. Up is generally known these days for its first 15 minutes, aka the saddest thing ever put on film. This is when Pixar really cemented its reputation as the studio that makes you cry all the time. Those opening scenes absolutely deserve all of the praise/tears that they get, but it shouldn't overshadow the rest of the movie. Up is one of the most creative animated movie concepts I've ever seen. It's an old man tying balloons to his house in order to float away on an adventure, where he lands in a mysterious secluded paradise, and also there's a Boy Scout, a giant bird, and a talking dog. It's a lot. But it all comes together well, and I think Carl has the best character arc in all of Pixar. Toy Story 3 is the best Toy Story movie. I don't know how common an opinion that is, but to me, there's little doubt in my mind that this easily tops what came before it. Skipping forward several years, this movie has Andy going to college. Now that their owner has outgrown them, the toys struggle to find their place in the world. Comparing it with the original Toy Story side by side, it looks mind-blowingly good. Technology came a long way. And the story is way more of an emotional roller coaster than the others. Plus, I loved all the new characters introduced here. Toy Story 3 took a formula and a world and took it to new heights. This is getting pretty repetitive, isn't it? I just keep going, this movie is great, over and over again. But what can I say? Pixar makes good movies. Well, except for Cars 2. It's kind of a mess. I agree with the general consensus that this is easily the worst Pixar movie. It's a sequel to Cars about a race around the world. And the protagonist of this movie isn't really Lightning McQueen, it's Mater, the comic relief character from the first movie. Something that becomes sort of a trend in future Pixar sequels. He gets all tangled up in a plot to sabotage the race, and most of the movie is a kiddie version of a James Bond spy thriller. This was a bad idea for so many reasons. First, Mater is fine in smaller doses, but as the main character, he's really annoying. And second, all this spy stuff that has almost nothing to do with cars in general. It's like the writers forgot that the characters are all sentient vehicles. It shows that the people who made it didn't have faith in their core premise. That said, it still has some funny moments, and it's not irredeemably bad. And Brave. Man, I wanted to like Brave. The trailer looks so cool. But, okay, so far I've been able to avoid spoilers, but I really need to talk about some plot points that come up partway through. So if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead like
45
seconds. So the movie starts off pretty good. Princess Merida doesn't want an arranged marriage and fights with her mom about it. Little derivative, but a decent start. Then she gets a spell from a witch that will supposedly solve all her problems, which she uses, and it turns her mom into a bear.
Wow, if I had a nickel for every
Disney movie where someone turns into a bear.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Then the whole rest of the movie is Merida hiding her bear mom and trying to undo the spell. As soon as the movie hits that point, it becomes a cartoonish slapstick comedy. Any nuance in character development is overshadowed by a giant bear lumbering around and getting into trouble. With all this dragging it down, Brave ends up as one of Pixar's weakest. Monsters University is a prequel to Monsters Inc., featuring Mike and Sully meeting each other in college. I wouldn't say it's as good as the original, but it's still pretty cool. Monsters University does a better job of showcasing a wider range of monsters with different designs and abilities. The plot centers around a scaring competition, which is pretty similar to every other college movie I can think of, but I think that it works pretty well. And even though it's a prequel, it manages to work in some surprises for the audience. Inside Out easily stands out as one of Pixar's best. It might take the number 2 spot after The Incredibles for me. There's the old meme from when this first came out that every Pixar movie is about what if blank had feelings. So the natural progression eventually took them to what if feelings had feelings. And yeah, that about covers it. This movie is about a bunch of personified emotions that live in a teenage girl's head. And rest assured, this movie is going to make you feel all of said emotions. Forget Up, this is the one that's going to make you cry more than once. I have to give a lot of props to the writing, and also to all the creative ways the animators personified the human brain. Highly recommend. The Good Dinosaur, though, is definitely a step down. The thing everybody says about this one, and that I agree with, is the animation of the environment, the trees, the water, the mountains, is gorgeous. But the dinosaurs? They look way too cartoony and fake. Besides that, the story isn't that good. It has some of those traditional Pixar feels mixed in, but most of the movie is too corny to really engage the audience. Finding Dory is not Pixar's best sequel. For one, it does the thing again where it makes the protagonist the comic relief from the first movie. But there's one huge reason why this movie fails. Most of it doesn't take place in the water. Yes, I'm totally serious. It takes place in an aquarium, which does have water, but in specific closed-off places. When all the main characters, who are fish, remember, keep finding ways to travel across land, while also sneaking past entire crowds of humans, it stretched my suspension of disbelief to the breaking point. Plus, that means we don't get to see all those awesome deep-sea environments like in Finding Nemo. It's another one with some decent moments, but it's generally of poorer quality. Cars 3 is, in short, better than Cars 2, but not as good as Cars 1. It's about Lightning McQueen getting old and losing to newer, faster, better cars. It's about racing, thankfully. That fixed Cars 2's biggest mistake. Also, Mater is barely in it, which very much feels like a response to fan backlash from Cars 2, which is kind of hilarious. There's nothing actively wrong with Cars 3, but it's just kind of forgettable. Coco. Great, awesome, fantastic movie. It's about a boy in Mexico during the Day of the Dead celebration, who accidentally ends up in the land of the dead and has to find his way back. It's got great characters, cool animated environments, all the Pixar feels, and a plot with plenty of twists and turns. It's very hard to talk about without spoiling, so I'll just say, everyone should see this movie, and leave it at that. I have very mixed feelings about Toy Story 4, for a few reasons. First, its relationship to the previous 3 movies is kind of awkward. The ending of Toy Story 3 made it very clear that it was supposed to be the last Toy Story movie, so that leads Toy Story 4 to feel a little tacked on. And the plot undermines the early movies a little. See, the first 3 were all about the toys trying to get back to their owners. Their entire purpose for existing was to make their children happy.
Somewhere in that pat of stuffing is a toy who taught me that life's only worth living if you're being loved by a kid.
Come on, Jesse. This is what it's all about. To make a child happy. And you know it.
Toy Story 4 introduces the idea that a toy can be happy living on their own without an owner. With that as an option, it cheapens the conflicts that came before. Like, if Woody could have always been happy without Andy, why did I have to watch 3 movies all about him getting back to Andy? But if you can ignore all that, and just focus on Toy Story 4 as its own thing, it's great. The plot is solid, and all the characters, new and old, are fantastic. Also, I really think this might be the best looking Pixar movie, period, and that's really saying something. Pixar doesn't have the best track record with sequels, but I have to say Toy Story is consistently good all the way through. Incredibles 2. Not The Incredibles 2, just Incredibles 2. It's a pretty good sequel. To be clear, it's nowhere near as good as the first movie, but that's not entirely fair. It's hard to top The Incredibles. Incredibles 2 is a pretty straightforward, fun superhero action story. It isn't breaking any new ground, and maybe in a time where superhero movies are everywhere, it feels less exciting, but it's worth a watch. Onward is about a world full of fantasy creatures where magic has been replaced by modern technology. This movie has its ups and downs, its pros and cons. The world building is probably where it suffers the most. It's not the most unique and original concept. And that aside, the story doesn't fully explore that concept in a satisfying way. But but the character work was what saves it. The main characters Ian and Barley and their dynamic make it worth watching, but I wouldn't call this movie amazing. Getting to the end here, next is Soul, or as I like to call it, The Meaning of Life, the movie. It's best known for tackling huge, heavy themes about life and death and your purpose for existing. And despite being a kids' movie, it gives a thorough, authentic exploration of those ideas. Everything else, plot, characters, animation, is about on par for everything else Pixar has made. I'd call it average by Pixar standards, which makes it great by movies in general standards. Finally, Luca. This is Pixar's most recent movie, available for free on Disney+. A lot of their previous releases have been ambitious, huge, high-concept stories. But here, they take it slower, telling a smaller, contained story about a couple of sea monster kids. And I liked it a lot. It hit the right balance of fun and heart-wrenching more accurately than the average Pixar movie. It was also cool to see a different art style from them. This cartoony human design is a departure from the usual, somewhat more realistically proportioned people. This is a movie that I would easily recommend. So that's every movie made by Pixar. However, in the interest of completeness, there are two more that I want to add in. Planes and Planes, Fire and Rescue. These movies are in a confusing position, because they look like Pixar movies, and they obviously take place in the same universe as Pixar's Cars. But Pixar didn't make these. They were made by Disney-Toon, the Disney studio that mostly makes direct-to-video sequels and side projects. So on some level they're not a Pixar movie, but they're too closely tied to Pixar for me not to talk about them. The movies follow Dusty the Crop Duster as he follows his dream of becoming a racing plane and a firefighting plane respectively. I went in with very low expectations for these, because they don't have the best reputation. I mean, they're a spin-off to a series that already isn't especially beloved. But at least for the first one, I found myself pleasantly surprised. It's a decent story about plane racing, with a nice message about rising above, what you were born into. Maybe a little formulaic, but decent. Can't say the same thing for the second. It's a real slog. It's way too much of watching fires get put out and not much of actual story or character development. And that's it. That's every Pixar movie. On average, this is an exceptional library of films, and Pixar has absolutely earned its reputation as the best animated studio around. There's maybe a slight dip in average quality towards the middle of its history, but they've left that period in the dust, and their most recent films are some of the best. So what makes them so great? Looking at them all with this zoomed-out perspective, there's a clear formula for what makes a Pixar movie and what makes it work. First, the cornerstone of all their best films is some kind of what-if scenario. What if toys had feelings? What if superheroes were real but they were outlawed? What if monsters worked a 9-to-5 job scaring humans? What if a living human traveled to the land of the dead? What if an old guy flew away by attaching thousands of balloons to his house? While this doesn't apply to every good Pixar movie, for example, I think Finding Nemo is a clear outlier, their worst movies don't have it. Like, Brave is a pretty straightforward premise about princesses and magic. The Good Dinosaur technically has a what-if idea presented in the trailer, but the movie never fulfills on the promise of that premise. The world we see in the movie is barely different from any other talking dinosaur movie out there. Cars is pretty much just, what if Cars? A Bug's Life is just, what if Bugs? And most of the sequels falter in part because the first movie already explored that what if scenario to completion. The exception to that being Toy Story, where each sequel finds a new and creative situation to explore the concept of living toys. From there, the plotlines follow a very traditional structure common to most movies. You take a protagonist, a character who's been living one way for a long, long time. They know their place, and they have a goal that they're working towards. Then, something happens that rips them out of their stable environment. But everything that they're good at, the skill that they always solve their problems with, doesn't work anymore. They spend the first 2/3 of the movie furious at their situation, but after messing up a ton of times trying to get back to their old life, they discover that something was missing from their perspective. What everything they felt was so important before suddenly feels less important. So they go into the climax and emerge victorious, creating a new, happier status quo. This is textbook 3-act structure, and Pixar has perfected it to a really impressive degree, to the point where most of their movies make for great ways to study screenwriting. You can find this formula anywhere in cinema, but Pixar has a few tricks up their sleeve that are unique to them. One of their biggest staples is the bickering duo. You have your protagonist, who is set in their ways, maybe a little jaded and grumpy, who then has to partner up with somebody impulsive and unpredictable. It's a great dynamic, and I'm always a sucker for it. Obviously, there's also the idea that Pixar movies make you cry. But those moments of intense sadness work specifically because 90% of these movies are really happy and cheerful. It highlights the sad moments and gives them way more oomph. Certain themes show up a lot, namely the power of human emotion. I don't just mean the power of friendship, these stories show us how much sentient, caring beings can accomplish through sheer force of will. There's a sizable internet community dedicated to the idea that every Pixar movie exists in the same universe telling the same story. Part of what makes it so fun and interesting is seeing the same ideas pop up over and over, so that even if Pixar didn't intend for the movies to be connected, it feels like they could be. I also want to touch on the animation and art style. Pixar is always pushing animation technology to do more, and they flaunt their skill constantly. Hair, water, humans, all of these were impossible to make look good just a few years before Pixar tried it first. Pixar sets the standard for what animated movies look like, for better or for worse, because other animation studios imitate this look pretty closely, leading to a lot of computer animated movies looking samey. Although Sony has been killing it lately in terms of new and creative looking animation, which might push Pixar to innovate even more. Luca was a small step away from Pixar's usual look and feel, which gets me excited for maybe some more variety in the future. And that's all of— oh, wait, the shorts, I forgot about the shorts. Okay, so besides their feature films, Pixar makes plenty of short films as well. First, in the 80s, when animation technology was still brand new, Pixar made 5 shorts that basically served as tech demos. The most famous of which is Luxo Jr., which is the origin of that lamp in their logo. From there, most Pixar feature films had a short play before or after them in theaters. In more recent years, we've gotten Pixar Spark shorts, which were released first on YouTube and then on Disney+. And finally, there's a sizable list of shorts and TV specials featuring characters from their movies. Time for my final rankings. What do I think are the best Pixar movies? Well, I already said that The Incredibles takes the top spot. That one's pretty hard to argue with. Then the rest of my top 5, in no particular order, are Inside Out, Up, Coco, and Toy Story 3. Although this is far from definitive. So many of these movies are so close to each other in quality that it makes narrowing down a shortlist like this really hard. Like every Disney movie, every single Pixar movie and short is available on Disney+, so happy watching. What's next for Pixar? Their upcoming movie, set to release in 2022, is Turning Red, about a girl who turns into a giant red panda when she's angry. And sometime after that, we're getting Lightyear, which is about Buzz Lightyear, the actual spaceman, not the toy. Kinda like that cartoon from the early 2000s, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. Anybody remember that? So that's Pixar. Not every single movie they make is a slam dunk, but their name is synonymous with high quality for good reason. Even their worst movie, Cars 2, isn't that bad. Taken as a whole, there can be little doubt that Pixar is the best at what they do.
You tell me what my suit is, woman! We are talking about the greater good!
Greater good? I am your wife. I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get.